Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective. Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Peter Fenger, and my guest today is Anthony Verdino. Anthony is a licensed clinical social worker and author of the new book, CBT Simplified, a simple guide to understanding cognitive behavioral therapy. With a background in outpatient hospital settings and private practice, Anthony specializes using cognitive behavioral therapy to help clients of all ages build mental resilience and emotional stability. He holds a master's degree in social work and a bachelor's in education and sociology, and he's dedicated to empowering individuals to turn their obstacles into pathways for positive change. Today, I'm joined by Anthony to demystify mental health using practical CBT strategies, from breaking the cycle of procrastination to reframing negative thoughts, offering a compassionate, simplified toolkit to regain agency and build lasting resilience. Well, I'm very excited to have Anthony with me on the show. Anthony, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, likewise. You know, Anthony, I have really enjoyed diving into your book, CBT Simplified. And those for listening in, it's essentially a roadmap to the core concepts of cognitive behavioral therapy. It helps you untangle the relationship between your thoughts, feelings, and actions, all while kind of keeping the tone light and easy to digest. Anthony, I know when we first met, you mentioned that CBT Simplified was a way to help your wife during a difficult pregnancy journey. So talk to me a little bit about how that personal experience kind of shaped the way and translated these complex clinical concepts into the book that then you simplified.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. We can't be a therapist to our loved ones, but it doesn't stop you from saying, hey, man, I got to do something to help. I put together a chart for my wife to help her after the first failed IVF attempt. By the way, we now have a 9-month-old daughter. She's happy and healthy. Just for anybody listening, it's a happy ending to the story.
That's great.
So what I did at first, I put the heaviest hitters of the thinking aspect or the cognitive aspect of CBT into an easy to follow chart. I used Microsoft Paint to create it. And with that, I had my friend who's very tech savvy make it a lot prettier through Figma. And when he was putting it together, he was like, Anthony, this is really good. You should come up with like a deck of cards or something. It could be used to help other people, maybe other therapists. And I said, you know what, maybe I'll do that. And it actually became my way of coping through the whole IVF process as well. So my wife had this simple chart to follow. It's called Transform Your Thinking in the book. It's there. And creating these quote unquote cards and images that go along with them, again, became my way of coping. I would say maybe probably 2-3 months in, and maybe like my 20th card, I said, you know what? I can just make this into a book. It'll be a lot easier to put into people's hands. And, people probably don't want to, shuffle through cards.
True.
So it was a double-edged sword. It became something for my wife, transformed into something for myself as well.
You know, and it's so funny because when I had a chance to read your book, one of the things that I thought about, I was like, wow, this would be a really good companion piece with like flashcards or charts. So it's really funny how it kind of like worked backwards from there, because honestly, your book, and it's written so simplistically that it almost seemed like a perfect starting point for some. Oftentimes, books about mental health can sometimes be a little bit text heavy, and they can also be big hurdle to kind of get through. But I found your book a real pleasure to go through, just a real breeze to kind of go through the little concepts that sort of followed me throughout my day. It was almost like it was bite-sized moments of CBT training.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really what I wanted to accomplish. Like if you're talking about how I learn, it needs to be simple, or I got to make it simple in order for me to understand it. So I kind of just assume that everybody would benefit from something like that,
Sure.
especially with the pictures too, right? Like we're all just children who grew up. Who doesn't love a picture book?
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about maybe just the importance of that simplification, because again, you're really taking the task of these kind of big clinical concepts and sort of breaking it out into an easier format. Talk to me a little bit about why that is such a critical step for maybe somebody that's starting their mental health journey.
Well, let's look at the world, right?
Yeah.
It's complicated and there's a lot going on. Nowadays, we're all pretty much these superhumans carrying computers in our pockets. Issue is, if you ever went to go check your email and you end up doing 2 or 3 other things, and then you forgot that you had to check your email, or
Yeah.
we just have so much distractions in our life. They call it some people call it VAST, variable attention stimulus trait,
Yeah.
and it looks like ADHD a lot,
Hmm.
but we can't all have ADHD.
Right.
With that, with all these distractions, it makes it hard to sort of hold on to something, to grasp concepts. So if we're really going to make something as complex and as dense as CBT stick for people and actually keep them motivated to want to learn about it, we got to present it in a straightforward manner. That's my mindset when it comes to it. You've read my book and you can see that CBT Simplified really it's 37 small pages of actual text,
Right.
30 images, and it's all solidified. The information is all solidified. So it makes, again, something as dense as CBT simple and way easier to apply for both self-help and helping others.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I really thought it was a fantastic reference. I'm thinking of the practitioners that are listening to our episode and
Mhm.
how easy it would be for me to present some of the concepts for those that might not be familiar with mental health or any of
Mhm.
these practices. It just became such an easy tool for me to just go back and reference that I found myself kind of paging back and forth through the book.
And that's really what I was hoping for. It says on the cover, it's a simple guide, and keyword is guide. I want people to be able to go back to it. And yeah, maybe some things won't resonate with them, but other things are likely to resonate. And it's not supposed to be something you read once and just put away. It's supposed to be something you can go back to help
Sure.
yourself based on what you're going through at that point in life or at that time of day. So I'm happy
Sure.
that you feel that way.
Yeah, and I know we've brought up a number of really good points of your book and sort of the perspective that you've written it, but I'm kind of curious, just from your own perspective, what do you think sets your book apart from maybe other books written on CBT?
So this is not a traditional CBT book
Yeah.
alone, since
Yeah.
it incorporates strategies and tools that aren't mentioned within CBT, but still go hand in hand with helping people apply CBT principles based on the barriers in front of them. I'm going to give you a couple of examples, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So we talk about behavioral activation. Simply said, that's doing what's meaningful, pleasurable, enjoyable to you, the individual.
Right.
Pair that with something else mentioned in the book, and I'm sure we'll talk about at some point today, the 1, 2, 3, go strategy, right?
Yes.
It's a way of actually getting started on doing something that you know will be good for you and will help you feel the way you want to feel. Then you have cognitive restructuring, challenging negative thoughts, also referred to as reframing. You have a part of the book called disagreements, where cognitive restructuring goes hand in hand with how you look at disagreements with other people.
Mm.
I refer it to, or I connect it to micro muscle tears of working out.
Yes.
Painful,
Mhm.
uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? But when you give enough time to heal and you do it properly, it makes that muscle stronger. It makes that relationship stronger.
Mm.
We have self-care, huge in mental health, as I know you already know, and a lot of the listeners already know.
Yes.
There's a part of the book called You Come First.
Mhm.
And it's essentially putting our own needs first, the oxygen mask analogy, in order to be strong enough to help other people. So there's a connection there. And then lastly, we talked about it before in the beginning of our talk, transform your thinking.
Mm.
It pairs deep breathing and acceptance, followed by cognitive restructuring and positive self-talk in a really simple to follow sequence that helps you essentially feel better when you have
Yes.
negative thoughts.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, and as I've read, you have done a really nice job of organizing the information to just like you're talking about how some of these skills stack on top of each other. And in fact, the final chapter is this acronym that you put together of positive that really creates the mind frame of positive mental health or positive wellness into this practice. I thought that that was brilliant.
I'm so happy you think that. And when you do look from A to Z,
Yeah,
now we said before that this is supposed to be a guide you can flip through at any point and
right.
learn something. You don't even have to read it in sequence. But if you do, it does stack one after the other. Even if something is discussed in a page before, you'll learn about it in more depth the page after. And I'm really excited to hear that you caught that as we were reading through. That was the plan. And
Yeah.
even if you look at how I divvied up the chapters, right?
Mhm.
Thinking, actions, feelings goes hand in hand with the 3 points of the cognitive triangle,
Right.
as well as self and others. And then if you really don't want to read through the book, the last 4 pages of the recap tell you everything.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I want to park on that, right? Because you mentioned the cognitive triangle, and this is, I
Mhm.
think, one of the best parts about you're not seeing it, from an audio medium, but in Anthony's book, he has illustrations, and you're illustrating the cognitive triangle. I've seen it before, but it's outlining the feelings and actions and how those things are interconnected. So my question to you is for someone that's feeling stuck, which of these angles is often the easiest, most effective place for someone to start when they want to make a change?
That's a challenging question because I would tell you that it's either between the thinking and actions part of the triangle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me explain what the cognitive triangle is in very few words, just for the listeners, and then
Please.
I will pick one of them. The cognitive triangle is the triad connection, the 3 point connection between how we feel, how we think, and how we act. Think, cognitive; act, behavior; cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Said simply. We can't control our feelings alone. And if we could, then we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now, right? People would be able to say happy and they feel happy, right?
Right.
But we can more so control the way we think and the way that we act. And when we do that, we can influence the way that we feel. Mind you, there is a circle around the triangle that is the environment in our bodies. And that does influence the way we feel, the way we think, the way we behave. The thing is, as long as we have a strong ability to control our thinking and our actions, it really doesn't matter as much to control the way that we feel. If I had to pick one, I would say, and this is really hard, I would say it has to be the thinking part of the triangle that trumps everything. If you have more so positive thinking, you're more likely to engage in the positive actions and, of course, influence the feelings to be positive. That does not put actions too far away from thinking. I have to stress that because even if you push yourself to take the walk after you're having a lousy day and thinking about things, the negative light, it's likely to start getting you to think about positive things, especially as you look around at the world around you. So they're
Right.
very close, but I would say thinking is the star of the show.
Yeah, and you've done a very nice job in the book of really outlining some of those practices to help change our negative thinking toward positive. And again, when we start to build those things up, it creates that neuroplasticity that then turns us into habits of positive thinking. Things follow after that.
Yeah, it can
Yeah.
definitely start becoming second nature. And that's one thing that I don't tell my patients and clients right away. We're not supposed to make promises or guarantees in therapy, but time and time again, I see it happening. And when it does happen, I love to throw it in like, hey, look, it became second nature. It tends to. That doesn't mean negative thinking won't return.
Mhm.
Even if you look at the transform your thinking chart, notice how it goes back to negative thoughts and
Yes.
it will continue to do that. But over time, we're able to reframe those thoughts more quickly. And yes, these habits build.
Right, right. We have the tools in order to get ourselves out of that, maybe that loop a little bit easier, a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when we had met, you talked a little bit about how therapy works partly because of self monitoring. And the exercises that you're outlining not only helps us monitor our thoughts and recognize those patterns, but really kind of empowers us how to get out of it. So then my question is how can listeners practice this agency outside of maybe the therapy office, way to gain control over their daily triggers? What sorts of practices would you recommend?
So self-monitoring is a means of processing. That has to be said first. We're thinking about our own thinking, true cognition.
Yeah.
And therapy is so effective because I think about half of the job is done from the fact that the person is speaking out loud.
Mhm.
In our minds, the example that I use time and time again, pigs can fly. You can actually imagine a pig flying in your mind, but
Right.
pigs don't have wings, pigs don't fly. It just shows you how wild our imagination can run and how much things can be magnified in our heads. When we speak out loud, so with that being said, we could also think about many, many things within 1 minute and process absolutely none of it. When we speak out loud, when we write things out, even when we send ourselves a text message, we're forced to process what we're thinking because we can only say so much and write so much and text so much in a minute. I think about it like this mansion. That's our thinking, right? It's this huge mansion that you have to force through a doorway. Now that's not my original thing. That's something that's said in therapy. So self-monitoring, to answer your question, can be practiced through journaling or
Yes.
writing out your thoughts, speaking to somebody you trust, texting yourself, or voice memos, or hey, even a therapist. It's
Yes.
anything that gets it out of just your head and into something that forces it through that doorway.
Man, you've put that so well. We talk about good practices. That's exactly how journaling can help, is that it does that process. And it's funny because as much of a pain and sometimes a chore it can be to journal, I'm like, boy, if there could just be an easy way for me to get my thoughts down, I could just speak into it or something like that. But journaling for me has been that safe space for me to process. And oftentimes there is a period of my writing. I have to get past maybe 2 pages before I start to really dial back into, that core self, under the conscious part of really some of my thoughts. And in way you have put that into how we practice, actually, I can see it in showing up in my writing.
That's awesome. And it's true, right? Like
Yeah,
you clip the wings off the pig, just like
right,
that. And
right.
it's great that you practice journaling. Other ways include too. Now, this is if you really don't want to write things out or speak them out, even at the end of your day, taking a moment to reflect on your day.
Oh,
I think if you're going to do it that way, there is some CBT approaches that are beneficial, like cognitive restructuring, trying to challenge those negative thoughts, the positive self-talk. But if you're really starting out with this and you find it hard to change your thinking, or I shouldn't say that word, if you find it hard to adjust your thinking,
mm,
then journaling is absolutely incredible, or just a voice memo. You don't even have to listen to it after.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, even just taking the pause to have a moment for reflection, I think is just an awesome introduction to that whole process. Writing can be tough. And not everybody is a writer, right? But
Right.
I think even just that small little bit of pause could be the difference of collecting positive thoughts that then make it easier for your brain to find those pathways, right? Right.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So I want to park on another one of the practices that you've outlined is the 3-point rule, the strategy, right? And it helps with vetting our actions. Walk us through what those 3 questions are and how those help us stop doubting our decisions. I thought it was brilliant. So talk to our listeners about this.
I'm so happy you enjoyed these concepts in the book. So the 3-point rule is actually one of the things that make the book unique. It's
Yeah.
something I created. If you're like me or my wife especially, sorry Jackie, we ask ourselves and we ask each other, is that bad? Is that wrong?
Mm.
And that's what inspired me to come up with this 3-point rule. It's a means of actually reframing our thinking. So it does tie right back into CBT.
Mm.
I know it sounds a little counterproductive to ask yourself more questions when you're doubting yourself, but if you ask the right questions, it can be super helpful.
Yeah.
One of the quotes, or the quote for this section, is doubt yourself less by asking yourself more. The 3 questions are, when you're doubting yourself, if you're questioning if something you want to do is bad or wrong, you ask yourself, is it harmful to me, what I believe in, or anyone else? If the answer is no to those 3 questions, then likely what you want to do is not bad or wrong. And it could be a good source of behavioral activation. Look at that, tied in another principle.
Right.
Now, that's not to say if one of these questions, if the answer is yes, that it's bad or wrong. At that point, it's a matter of trying to process it a little further. An example would be, hey, this friend did something that really hurt me, and I'm going to confront them about it. That might make them uncomfortable, and that might be harmful to them, but it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt what I believe in, and it may lead to a closer friendship. And even if it doesn't, maybe it's necessary in order for me to preserve my inner peace. So those
Yeah.
are the 3
Yeah.
questions. Yeah.
No, I love that approach because oftentimes we are tasked to do or to have difficult conversations. And if you have a personality that, you know, almost feeds on other people to be okay in order to feel okay, we talked about codependent relationships, right? This is
Mhm.
a perfect set of questions to kind of go through and really reconnect with your gut and really kind of make some of those conversations safe, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if you pair those conversations or structure those conversations with assertive communication.
Mm, yes.
Another heavy hitter in CBT. Now, mind you, assertive does not mean aggressive. Assertive communication is effective communication. It means I'm going to tell you how I feel, what I think, and what I need. And in turn, I'm going to listen to how you feel, what you think, and what you need. It bridges the gap between the 2 people, and it really helps to sort out disagreements and build a stronger relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it really goes back to building these stronger relationship. These are tools that can help us communicate our needs because sometimes that's not always clear, especially when there's a power differential, right? So some of these practices are fantastic. I found myself using those practices in my relationship with my wife. It
Oh,
made our
man.
relationship better.
You are making my day right now. That is awesome.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. Americans are increasingly concerned about mental health, with nearly 9 in 10 voters seeing it as a crisis. Mental Health First Aid provides crucial training to identify, understand, and respond to mental health and substance use challenges. Gain the skills and confidence to offer life-saving assistance. We offer courses for individuals, groups, and organizations of all sizes, including specialized training for veterans, law enforcement, EMS, and educators. Visit mentalhealthfirstaid.org or email hello@mentalhealthfirstaid.org to schedule your training and make a difference in your community.
I know another illustration you use in your book is the yin yang symbol. And you say that without acceptance, we can't effectively practice skills. So, why is accepting the darkness actually key to appreciating the light?
I love the way you put that. And it is incredibly important. Let me use a very, very simple analogy. If you dropped your pen on the floor right now and you don't accept that your pen fell on the floor, are you going to make the effort to actually lean down and pick it up? Like, no, because you're not accepting that the pen fell. When it comes to negative thinking, we have to understand something. It's going to happen. Humans are negatively biased creatures. We are just animals in the animal kingdom. Just like a squirrel who runs away because it's like, don't touch me, right? We have those instincts as well. And that's why when our minds are idle, they say the idle mind is the devil's workshop. They
Right.
tend to go to negative places. Positivity and negativity are relative. One does not exist without the other. Think about it like that. So I love the yin yang symbol. I've been fascinated with it since I was a little boy. And I think that it says a lot in a non-traditional sense.
Yeah.
I look at this circle as life. It's a continuum. The problems of today are very similar to the problems of the past. We can complain about gas prices today, and maybe they complained about hay prices back in the day.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be, there's always going to be the darkness, the negative, the problems, just like there will always be the light. So when we accept that, it puts us in a place to have balance and have peace. Now, going a little further into the yin yang symbol, as you hinted to, when we focus on the light, on the good in our life, the bad is just as significant as the dot in the field of white, that dark dot in the field of light. Same thing when we're in a dark place and all we look at is the negative. Well, there's always that one thing that can bring us a sense of peace or happiness.
Mm.
What we choose to focus on is what we'll get more of. You'll never get away from the negative, but when you accept that it is there and you choose to focus on the positive, that is what you'll see more of.
Yeah. Wow. I love that expression because it really just gives us an opportunity to empower our thoughts, and again, as you've defined the symbol and really the meaning behind it, it really shows that there is hope in everything.
Right. There is. There is. And hey, if you're pessimistic, you could say, yeah, there's darkness in everything. Well, that's
Yes,
fine.
both can be true.
And both can be true. And
Right.
what is going to help you feel positive is
Mhm.
focusing on the positive. It goes back to that cognitive triangle
Mm.
and the thinking part of it, connecting right back to how you feel. So it's true. When you accept both, you realize that it's your choice.
Yes, we have the power in how we want to show up. How do we want to act, right? When we
Yes.
when we are able to recognize our thoughts, we have the power of how we want to show up. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I know another concept you talk about is deep breathing. And sometimes deep breathing is just too simple, right? We can talk about meditation, but that's a hard practice. But deep breathing is also what you're calling a golden coping skill. So talk to me a little bit about the science, what's happening in our bodies when we take deliberate breaths.
Deep breathing, the golden coping skill. It is something that we can do at any point in our day-to-day life. I will happily break this down. There's a drug that we could all take. It's free and it's pretty healthy. It's called oxygen.
Oxygen, yeah.
Next time you're stressed, Peter, I'm encouraging you to do this as well as the listeners. Next time you are stressed, try to self-monitor just for 2-3 seconds. You're breathing. I will bet you that you're either holding your breath or breathing in a very shallow manner. What that does, it causes our heart rate to go up. It elevates our blood pressure. And when that happens, it signals to our brain to tell our adrenal gland to produce this hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone. It's the fight or flight response. So an already stressful situation is going to actually make you feel worse and worse and worse, and even possibly contribute to panic. When we take deep breaths in and exhale very slowly, what happens is that oxygen paired with the exhale of the carbon dioxide decreases our heart rate, lowers our blood pressure, and thus signals to our brain to tell the adrenal gland to chill out on the cortisol production. And it helps us to feel better. I want to go into a little bit more detail about why we talk about into the nose and out through the mouth. The nose is designed for oxygen absorption. They've done studies on this. It's about 18% more effective in absorbing oxygen than mouth breathing. The slow exhale out through the mouth is important because it helps to get all the stale air out of our lungs, which has its own set of health benefits, but also, again, works with carbon dioxide to get the heart rate and get the blood pressure down.
Yeah.
I know that you've heard of it before. A lot of the listeners have heard of it before. It's in media, it's in our TV shows, it's in our movies. When somebody's freaking out, just breathe, just breathe. And the last thing that you probably want to hear is just breathe. Try it
Right.
next time. Take a couple of deep breaths with full exhales, maybe 3 times, and you will see a difference chemically and thus emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when my body gets a little wired and I'm able to take some slow breaths and trying to be mindful and coming back to the present, eventually my body will follow. Like I recognize it. I've done this process enough to recognize that the physical sensation that I'm feeling in my body when I take slow breaths and I'm able to slow down, my body will eventually come back. I know that there is the biological sense of really trying to trigger the parasympathetic nerve. And by,
Mm,
us having a longer exhale, by us having a pause between breaths, those are the
mm.
things that activate within our body to bring us back down to this like sort of normal level that we see. But yes,
Absolutely.
out of all of it, it really just comes down to breathing. It can be so simple. And, meditation and stuff, that's a practice. That can be difficult for some.
It's true. And then even the
Yes.
book actually covers that as well
Yeah.
under mindfulness. When you talk about meditation, when you talk about grounding, even prayer, it's
Yes.
part of mindfulness, centering ourselves back in the present. They say life is a gift. That's why they call it the present. I
Right.
say live in the present to unwrap happiness, right?
Mm.
So it's true. It's true. And especially if you don't have the patience like myself for meditation.
Right.
Again, just take a couple of those deep breaths and you'll notice the difference in how you feel. And hopefully it'll ground you in that present.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the grounding techniques is those are the practices of coming back to the present.
There's a simple mindfulness exercise in the book as well. It's not something I created. It's just this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where you look at the things around you and end with one positive thing about yourself. It's just a quick way to ground yourself. If anybody's interested in doing something that's simple and that you can remember while you're driving or when you don't have the time to think about or listen to a guided meditation, let's say.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. We talked a little bit about, relationships, right? And sometimes there can be rifts, right? And sometimes there needs to be a chance for forgiveness. And you describe forgiveness as a form of cognitive restructuring, right? And you have this great illustration, right, of a plant and there's a sun. And when we hold grudges, we create gray clouds around that sun and our plant just withers and dies. But when we have a chance to forgive, and we release some of our emotional energy, we can flourish as this plant. So talk to me a little bit about how holding a grudge actually controls our emotional energy.
When I mention forgiveness in individual therapy sessions, I usually pair it with please don't throw anything at me. It's one of the it's one of the last things people want to hear.
Yeah.
I don't want to forgive my aunt. She did this to me. I don't want to forgive my brother. He's a jerk. The thing is, it's not about forgiving the person to their face, especially if you think that person is going to take it and run with it, justify their actions. It's about forgiving them within your mind, within your heart. I know that sounds corny, but there's a saying. It goes, holding a grudge is like letting somebody live inside of your head rent free. Forgiveness is the eviction. It gets them out of your own mind. It moves the cloud away from that sun and it shines the light into yourself. Think about it like that. Now, if you look at forgiveness from that lens, it's a means of reframing how you think about the grudge. Also, I can't mention forgiveness without also pairing it with guilt. Talk about grudge towards others, there's guilt towards our own selves. If you remember earlier, I mentioned something about how we come first. If we're not forgiving our own selves, it's going to be very difficult to forgive others internally. So we also have to try to forgive ourselves. When we do this, we are essentially practicing cognitive restructuring. We're letting that light in and we're allowing our mind to be free to think about other things, focus on other things, do other things. Keep something in mind. If it's hard for anybody out there to process the idea of forgiveness and really can't let go of that grudge, think about that person you're holding a grudge against. A lot of the time, they're not even thinking about you. Now you're giving them more control over you than I'm sure you want to do. So again, forgiveness is that eviction and it is freeing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when we experience trauma in our life, oftentimes with other people in relationship, it's kind of like a car accident and where, you know, we both kind of get in an accident, but I get really injured and I have to go through life and I have to repair while you can kind of walk away. Same kind of
Mhm.
concepts you're talking about here of the other person isn't thinking about you. You're still spending all this mental energy on holding that grudge and keeping things. And I understand, you know, cognitively, our minds are trying to protect us from that danger again.
Mm.
But when we create the opportunity to forgive, we almost complete that emotional loop, right? We free ourselves from that pain.
Yeah.
And, you know, and as you described, you know, oftentimes when we hold things against other people, we dislike other things in other people, we have to really think about ourselves and what are we not capable of. So it almost gives us an opportunity to open our minds on what we are capable of, you know, as ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's true. It's true. Because think about it. Now that space is free for that thinking. It
Yes.
opens it back up to us, what we need, what we want,
Mhm.
right? It opens it back up to behavioral activation. Again, that CBT term,
Yeah.
doing what's valuable, meaningful, pleasurable, enjoyable to us, the
Yes.
individual. You're absolutely right, Peter.
Yeah. Yeah. I know in our previous conversation, you know, we talked a little bit about how depression is comfortable. You know, it's
Mm,
easy for us to stay in bed than it is for us to really kind of get up or kind of work through it. So, you know, we talked a bit about, you know, recognizing our coping strategies, but how do we recognize maybe coping strategies that turn from positive to negative, right? When we stay in bed, we're avoiding from putting ourselves in danger, right? But when we recognize some of these coping strategies, we have a chance to almost recognize what is considered avoidant.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's look at something. I'm going to answer that but first I want to talk about the comfortability of depression and even anxiety,
Yeah.
right? There's a big difference between sadness and depression, stress and anxiety, and I talk about that in the book. Sadness and stress are normal human emotions. We have to accept that. And they have benefits. Depression and anxiety are debilitating clinical conditions. Debilitating. Right? Let's look at, for example, procrastination. It's a symptom of anxiety.
Right.
It's what sometimes keeps us in the bed in the morning, what prevents us from actually doing something.
Right.
I remember a TED talk with a lady named Mel Robbins who talked about the countdown method. It's an action initiation strategy. And I have the 1, 2, 3 go strategy in my book.
Yes. Yes.
It comes in many forms. It could be the second hand on an analog clock, moving on the 12, or even a digital clock. When the numbers change, you actually move. When we overthink, it tends to become the pig with the wings again.
Yeah.
And when we start the action, we realize it wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. So when you practice an action initiation strategy, it helps to break out of that comfort and initiate the action only to realize it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be.
Yeah.
To move forward into what you talked about with the positive and negative coping strategies and sort of self-monitoring for when something is becoming more so negative, the key is go back to that 3-point rule or just ask yourself for a moment, hey, is what I'm doing, is it hurting me? Even if it's just that one question. Negative coping, an example would be drug use. It certainly can help block out the thinking and make us feel better. The thing is, it's like putting a bandage over a break. It doesn't actually solve or address the issue. It just covers it up. Now, would you put a bucket under a leak in your home and just say, hey, it's fixed? Right? No, because eventually that's going to become a bigger problem and probably be very expensive later on and a bigger headache, right?
Right.
And that brings us to the other word you used, avoidance. In the book, I talk about beware of avoidance because avoidance is not something that's going to solve the issue. It's comfortable. It's a lot easier to do, but it can be incredibly harmful. Try to make sure the coping strategies that you're using don't ignore the issue. Now, you can avoid a dark alleyway. That's cool. Yeah, you should do that, right? But addressing somebody who constantly is hurting you or addressing an issue that's constantly putting you in a place where you just want to crawl into bed can be your path towards peace.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I find growth happens when we recognize those moments of avoidance and step toward it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. And you might have heard this before when you are suffering from anxiety. One of the best things to do is actually lean into the thing that's causing you the anxiety,
That's
right? It demystifies it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And just on a personal note, your 1, 2, 3 go process has been game changing for my last couple weeks. As somebody who overthinks and can get anxious, procrastination can add up. And that technique has been the difference of me thinking too long and just starting to go and act. So I
Wow.
appreciate you bringing that to my awareness. That has been something I've put into practice.
You
And I,
just keep making my day over and over again, Peter. I'm so happy to hear that.
yeah. Well, and I want to ask you, kind of on a personal note, as you put this book out, what do you want the reception to be?
I'll say it like this. I know that our time here is limited, and I want to do everything in my power to leave this world better off than how I found it. I want to use the time that I have to help people. I want to make a difference. I want to be somebody that my daughter can be proud of. And I'm hoping that this book does that. It's not about money because if I wanted that, I wouldn't get a degree in social work.
Yeah.
I want to help people. And that's why I wrote this book. That's why I do what I do. I want to be a positive role model for others and for my daughter.
No, I appreciate that. And I can see how your values come through not only in the book and the incredible content that you put into it, but really our conversation today. So I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me, Anthony. This has been a lot of fun. But I do want to park on one final question. And I want to
Sure.
ask for those who are interested in doing a deeper dive and really getting into some of these strategies and even seeing the incredible visuals that you've created, where can they go to find CBT Simplified and really connect with your work?
You could go to Amazon and just search CBT Simplified. It should be the first thing that pops up. It's a blue cover on the book. You could also go to Barnes& and Noble online, and you could go to anthonyverdino.com where there's a link to my book. There'll be a link to this podcast and other podcasts, as well as some reviews about me and my LinkedIn, which has all of the visuals laid out in posts So there's a couple of ways. I'd say the easiest thing to do would be just go to anthonyverdino.com. You could find the book right from there. But if not, Amazon, search it. And anything that I do in the future will definitely be on my website.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I hope that our listeners get an opportunity to see your visuals and really connect with your book. But for today, Anthony, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on to our show.
Peter, the pleasure is all mine, and I would love to come back on the show one day. You are excellent. The process that you set up for this interview today was absolutely incredible, and I thank you for allowing me the honor of being here today.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Of course. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you very much, and I appreciate this podcast.
And want to thank your listeners for taking the time to join us. You can follow us on our social media on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and more at Behavioral Health Today. If you like our show, please give us 5 stars and leave us a review. And as always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at tryathq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today. We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Tried Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.